about it. Yeah. So for now, I have a son on the way, and it made me think about our upbringing. And it made me think about how do I teach him when we were taught to be men was so toxic. So the toxic masculinity that we were taught was so kind of wrong that I wanted to talk to you guys today because I was really thinking about how do I teach him how to be a man? What even is a man now for these days? So I wanted to start off with the question, growing up, what were y'all examples of men growing up? So who wants to start? Nobody's jumping to start. You want me to go first then? So my example of men was really, it was hard because not a lot of people in my neighborhood had their dads. If they did, we had our stepdads. So I had my stepdad growing up, but he was a drug abuser. He was abusive to us. So he was my definition, and also my cousin who I looked up to. My cousin's 10 years older than me. And I looked up to him because he was the guy first of all, he went to jail. He got out and he had a Tahoe. He was listening to rap music. Like, he was the first person I listened to DMX and all this stuff. The Locks, the Rough Riders. He was blasting that at first. And I just thought he was like the coolest guy. And that's who I kind of wanted to be. I wanted to be that because he was kind of like a rapper to me. Oh, like, in a sense. And that's who I kind of
that is interesting.
Looked up to. Yeah, so, and then, of course, in the neighborhood, we were all the same age, so they couldn't influence us, but it was mostly, those were kind of the two examples that I saw growing up. So what were y'all examples?
Yeah, I'll go first. I guess second. There's two that pop in my head when I think about it. Of course, I didn't grow up with my father, but I grew up with my grandfather being very present in my life, where every Saturday morning we would go to the marina and bail out a boat, water out of a boat that would never actually get a chance to actually ride in. Pretty much everywhere I went, I was with him. You know, he tried to teach me how to fish. He brought me to work when I needed to pick me up from work. So he was just that constant present that was actually there in my life. And then I think about the neighborhood father that my friend who acted, his father was there. His name, I guess I could call it, we call him Papa, but his name is Clarence Rocks. And what he would do with all the kids in the community is that we would go to his house and he'll show us how to like build stuff and show us how to use a hammer, how to use a saw. So I just remember that being such a big part of, I guess, my childhood. Just those two men who actually made a presence to kind of like let you know that this is the role you're supposed to play, I guess, in your household. So that's the two I remember growing up.
So you had somebody who was actually teaching you like the roles of man.
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah, because my grandfather, he worked and he just was that person. He was the provider, and that's just what I knew in terms of what you're supposed to do in terms of taking care of your household. He was that example to me.
So I had the same thing in a sense. Mm-hmm. My stepdad, he started teaching me stuff of what a man should do. The only problem is he was actually preparing for him walking out of my family.
Oh, wow.
So like he was preparing me to be the man of the household, so he felt better about when he was going to walk out.
That's some good planning. I mean, ironically.
That's good planning. Yeah, so he would teach me how to fix a car or budget, like all that stuff. But yeah, he was preparing to walk out on the family. So, you know.
I don't know how to receive that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Rolf.
So for me, it would be my uncle and his father. His father's not my biological grandfather, but I did call him like my grandfather. But so my uncle's 14 years older than me, and so we used to go everywhere together. He would literally take me everywhere with him. So for the most part, when like people didn't realize that we were like, actually he was my uncle, I was his nephew. It was more like we were brothers. But he would take me everywhere with him. He would try to teach me how to do stuff. He taught me how to drive. He taught me how to fix certain things. And then also his father was around. He would also take me places. He taught me how to swim. You know, he would take me to the beach all the time. He would take me to the park. He would just teach me how to do stuff. So those were the two people that were really two males in my life at that really molded me towards the person I am today. Because, you know, my father was in and out of my life. So those were the two I really had.
Okay. What about you, EJ?
So at different points in life, I had different, you know, examples. I will say when I was really young, my dad was not really around often. We all know he was in the military, and so he would get deployed, and instead of moving us around, he would go take the tours. So it would be like 1 or 2 years, and he'd be gone and he'd be back with us, which I'm appreciative for. But he wasn't there. So when I was very young, you guys are probably going to laugh. I honestly thought that Michael Jackson
What?
was my dad.
Oh my
And the
God.
reason why he was gone was because he was touring and making all this music.
I can unpack this.
So it's funny when I think of it now, but as a kid, I don't know why. Like,
So you hold on. So you envisioned.
I
Even the Michael
envisioned,
Jackson as a man.
yes,
The legend, the GOAT.
the goat.
The goat
Yes,
wearer.
I have no idea, but as a kid, that's
Thriller.
I was obsessed with
Thriller.
Michael Jackson, his music, his artistry, his ability to kind of like mesmerize you.
So you just made him
his
your
presence.
dad.
So it literally in my mind, okay, my dad's leaving, and this is what he's turning into.
Oh wow!
So-
Metamorph into Michael Jackson.
Yes.
This is so interesting.
And I don't know why in my mind. So that was a really big piece for me, I think. And I think also the thing about it is that my voice has always been high. So there was a connection. Michael Jackson's voice was always high.
Right.
So as a kid, I was always taunted about it. And even as an adult, I'm still taunted about it. But then moving forward, living with my grandfather in Tennessee, he taught me a lot of stuff about carpentry work, about working with your hands.
Mhm.
He was a carpenter. He was a farmer. That my grandma and my granddad, they both had several different farms, and they actually had a lot of land at one point. And so they would grow crops, and I learned about that as well. And then later on, I started to build a connection with my dad as he would tour less, and we would be more in a stable place. And we would spend time. It was always awkward, and I think it's still always awkward, only because it wasn't something that happened all the time. So he would talk to me about things. He would teach me about when you're dating females at the time. This is what you do. This is how you interact. They should be on this side. You should always try to protect them. And just basically, that's kind of how I ended up getting, my idea or basis for masculinity.
I feel like I don't have the degrees to unpack what you just told me.
I really would love to get deep into that.
Yeah, that's probably something we gotta do offline because I was just shocked.
I just want to know why you think Michael Jackson.
I have no idea. I think I idolized him.
Yeah, I
Just
think-
like any other, kid at that
Right.
time.
And I think you felt like
Yeah.
kind of a kinship to him because you're talking about the similar and
Mhm.
maybe voices that you felt like, oh, we're similar. That
Right.
this is
I
where
mean, I was
the
a kid,
loins
Joe.
that I came from.
I was a kid, y'all.
So-
What you
See,
mean?
you ever giving us that little piece of nugget that we can definitely clown you on.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
But I already told y'all this before.
Oh no, we're gonna get these jokes off. We're gonna get these. So, so with all that, how do y'all, with y'all experiences, or what y'all saw as an example of a male, how do y'all feel like growing up? I know it's different from now, but growing up, how did you feel like a man was? Like, what was the definition of a man with the kind of examples that y'all got? Well, go ahead.
For me, present is the biggest one. Just being there and just leading is the things I think about. Because when I think of my grandfather, he was always there. He was always present. He was always doing what he needed to do to make sure that the family was taken care of. And like I said, he really everywhere he was, I was. I was the first grandchild out of all of my cousins, and really the first grandson for a minute. So we definitely had that time together as far as being a grandson and grandfather together. So he just was always a presence, and there's a comfort that I have with him, even to the point he was even the one who gave me the other half of my money to buy Shanita's engagement ring. That's the type of relationship we have. So yeah, he just was. When I think of a man, someone who is just there, and making sure that his family is taken care of.
So that's interesting because I would probably never say present. Like, and I'm talking about me growing up. None of us had our dad, so it was like for me, it was just like the man kind of just paid the bills and made shit happen. Like that's why I tell my wife all the time. I was like, I have one job only, and that's to make shit happen.
Oh wow!
And
He just loves saying that.
Yeah, I do. But present, that's interesting because growing up now, of course, I would think that growing up I didn't because none of us had our dads to even that come into fruition. Because I don't even know kind of how do I feel like the definition of a man was, but I feel like all of us in the neighborhood were just trying to figure out kind of as we went along. So even though my stepdad was there, we weren't cool. We didn't have a relationship. We didn't I don't even know if he generally even liked us, like me and my brother. Wow. I think that we were a package deal with my mom, but that's a really hard question, and I wrote this question down, and I don't even know if I can answer it, but Ron, I'm gonna let you take a stab at it.
I'm doing pretty much the same thing as Moore's present. I mean, I know I didn't really have my father in and out of my life, but I mean, he was a father to my brother and sister.
He was a father to somebody.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So, but I mean, just seeing my uncle with his father, having his father around, and I guess another thing I would say would be like a teacher, like teaching you how to do things, making sure you're able to fend for yourself as you get older, and have some type of independency. So I guess that would be my answer.
No, that's real, because I want to tell, and I hope, Char, you're okay with me telling this story, because this involves me too. It ain't just about you. But we had a meeting at Char's house, like all of us. It wasn't a meeting; it was a hangout with our wives was there and girlfriends and whatever, and we were barbecuing, and we were all standing around the barbecue, and we all figured out that none of us know how to barbecue. None of us know, and we all are sitting there struggling, trying to figure out how to do it. And we realized that we did not have dads in our lives to teach us how to barbecue. We came to that realization.
Wait, I wasn't there.
No, you weren't there. But it was all of us there. We were literally all standing around the grill, trying to figure this thing out, and this was like last year, and so this is not even like.
And might I add, this is not your heavy duty.
No,
it's the cold one.
It was just a plain cold grill.
Basic grill.
Yeah. Oh my gosh!
And we didn't know.
What is the irony that I can't barbecue? That my dad taught me how to barbecue.
I didn't have my dad.
You came to the party, but I think you should have later. But at that point,
we figured it out because Charles had to come in and barbecue for us because we didn't know. And the irony of it is, my dad can barbecue, like he can barbecue, and because he wasn't in my life growing up, that's just not a skill that
he got taught.
That I got taught. But go ahead. That's why when you said teacher, it brought me to that story, and I just had to share that story.
That was hilarious.
Go ahead, Edward.
So I think that what I learned as far as characteristics, that you are the head of the house, right? I think that comes from teaching not only parents, but also when we look at our religious backgrounds, they're the head of the house, they're controlled, they're strong, they're stoic, right? So you don't show emotion, you don't let things phase you, you kind of let it roll off your back. I don't think that there's anything else in that. Basically, anything that kind of keeps you like fortified as a strong figure, provider, protector, like all of those things are things that have been taught to us and to me specifically about what a man is, or attributes that are associated with men.
No, that's real, because I think the stoic and you don't show emotion is kind of like the main thing I always thought. You're not supposed. That's why I always say you make shit happen. Nobody cares. Have you heard the phrase, I don't care about the labor pain, show me the baby? Like, nobody care about all that extra
I feel like
stuff.
you would say that to Lori, too.
Yeah.
No, I've said it, but no, I haven't said it now because she's actually pregnant. But so I can't say it now, but yes, I have said it. Nobody cares about your struggle. They just want to
let me hold the baby.
Get the solution from it. But I'm interested. I just wrote a note down. And how did they introduce like being a gentleman did they teach y'all that, like gentlemen, or like maybe the sex talk? Cause they all know my sex talk story, so I'm gonna just tell my sex talk story. And my stepdad, so he's in the car, and I was like in middle school, and he picked us up from school. We headed home, and he just like literally we get in front of the house. He stops the car, looks at me, and says, "Have you ever ate pussy before?"
Wow.
And I'm in
shock.
Yeah, I'm in middle school. I don't know what pussy is at this time. So I don't know what the correct answer is. So I'm sitting here like, yes. Like I'm trying to figure it out what the answer is.
For a 6-year-old. I'm a sixth grader. Actually.
Yeah.
That's like what, 11, 10,
Yeah.
12,
Yeah.
like somewhere.
Yeah, so I'm confused, and it turns out he was drunk and high at that time. And that's of course what I didn't know at that time. But so I run in the house, and the funny thing is when he asked me, he never explained what it was. So it's still, I don't know what he's talking about. So the first thing I do being a kid is I run to my mom like, yo, he just asked me have I ever ate pussy before, and I don't even know what that means. So now my mom is, and not only we found out that he's drunk, so she's even more pissed that he's driving us while drunk. So that was my sex talk. I don't think I've ever been like taught gentlemen, and again, I have a bunch of stories. My story about being like gentlemen, like I didn't know pumping gas was like gentleman behavior. And so until I saw on Facebook somebody clown somebody for actually like they were in the car while their girlfriend was pumping gas, and then Facebook was clowning them, and I was like, I didn't know that was that was being gentleman. So I wondered like
Chivalry.
who taught y'all? Yeah, the chivalry.
Yeah.
Who taught y'all? Like, did y'all have those talks?
Okay. I always love the story because I think about it now in hindsight. I never got the sex talk with my grandfather or really any man. My mom took it upon herself to, I guess, provide information about that. So one day I was at home and my mom literally gave me a book about men and what happens down there and all that stuff and what happens. And that literally was my, I guess, introduction to
What happens down there? I'm sorry.
I can't deal with that. So he's still saying down there, as a grown adult.
I said that in a very sarcastic perspective, what I was saying. So that was my introduction. But I think, to your point, in terms of being well, come on, y'all stop.
I'm just like,
I was trying to be funny, but I guess y'all
it is funny, like down there.
You didn't catch my drift there. But
No, you know why we didn't catch it? Because it's so normal for you.
That's exactly how we expected you to.
That's what we expected you to say. Down there.
So, but in terms of being a gentleman, it's almost like I think I got through osmosis in a sense because I saw how my grandfather treated my grandmother, and it's almost like I found out how to be a gentleman by looking at what not to do based off the people I did see around in my life. So, and then also, I think I really got the idea of how to be a gentleman, and more importantly, how to be truly a man from my experience working at Lockheed in New Orleans. And I think about the guys I hung out with there. Shout out to Willie Howard, Gary Jackson, and Cedric Love in particular, because what we used to do is they'll take, like after work, we'll go out, go to the bar, chill, and have some drinks. And in terms of hanging out with men and hearing conversations that married men had about their wives, it's really the first exposure I've got as far as how men interact with each other, and more importantly, how men treat their women in a sense. So I think those two, that was really where I truly, although it wasn't a formal conversation, it was informal in the sense they kind of gave me an idea of how a man should treat a woman, and also how a man should interact with other men in a sense. So that kind of was my, I guess, lessons that I got early on. So
for me, I learned chivalry and how to treat a woman from my mother.
Oh.
Yeah, so, and then I also got a sex talk from my mom, which really wasn't a sex talk. She just called me when I was 16 and said, "Hey, are you having sex?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Okay, here's some condoms."
She did very short PSA.
She was like, "I would have preferred you to wait, but oh well."
It's too late now.
Too late now. So,
So, point of no return.
yeah. So I mean, she was really the one that really taught me how to be chivalrous and all that stuff, and what I should do, opening doors for women, holding doors for women, pumping gas.
I didn't know.
Putting
I
women,
didn't know.
So,
putting women on the inside.
Yeah.
All
I
that.
knew about
So
that.
I learned that.
I just didn't know
from-
pumping
The
gas.
thing about
thing.
it-
so you let the people that you were dating pump gas when you were in the car with them? Is that what?
Yeah.
See, okay, that's what I was
Wow.
gonna ask you because
Yeah.
no one ever told me per se that a guy's supposed to do that. It was just something that I just absorbed and assumed that
So-
was the role of a guy.
So you probably observed it happening.
probably
No, you
observed it,
probably
yeah,
observed
yeah.
it. Like even like my dad, when I started being around my dad, I just noticed that he's never driving. He's always on the passenger seat, and I feel weird. I feel weird about that, and I guess that's masculinity, that we're always the driver. But it was something about that always turned me off, that he was always the passenger. But yeah, before I would have it was any female. It wasn't even when I'm in a relationship. Any female who was pumping gas, I just let them pump gas. I was like, yes, they call it pump gas. So now what I do is, it don't matter who I'm with the female, I automatically do it because I'm not going to be a mean.
Okay.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, that's my whole.
So your motivation is
Yeah.
not to be
Yeah,
Not to
mean.
be a mean. That's
Yeah.
the only reason I do it. I don't want to be a mean.
not because it's the right thing.
Yeah.
I just don't want to be a meme.
Listen, man, this is 2020. Women are independent. They have the ability to pump their gas. I just don't want to be a mean.
Okay.
That's what I just don't want to be a mean. So,
Okay.
and now I got a pregnant wife, so I definitely don't want to be a mean.
Interesting though.
So that's my motivation. But we'll go ahead, EJ.
So,
Yeah.
Oh, you was,
Okay,
okay, I'm sorry.
I got nothing else.
okay.
Yeah, no, I think mine is very similar to Roz. I learned a lot from my sisters and my mother, because I had 4 sisters. I had no brothers at all, and my dad gone. That leaves me with. I lived with 2 of my sisters. One would come to visit, and then I lived with my mom. So I always had women around me. So they were always teaching me. Not only were they teaching me, but I was observing how my older sisters, how men were treating them, or at that time, I guess, boys were treating them, and I saw what not to do. So I kind of did the opposite. I also got to see a lot in church, how pastors, treated the first lady as far as like escorting them and opening doors. My dad did a lot to tell me about, how, a woman should always be on the inside when you're walking. I would always see my dad opening doors. So a lot was observed. There were some education. I would say that probably the biggest component of me understanding what should be done is from observation.
Yeah, I think I agree, and I think a lot of my teaching is funny. It's from sitcoms. A lot of my teaching is from like how to deal with family and interact with families. Like I watch
Friendship Valley,
Fresh Prince, Cosby Show,
Family Matters,
Family Matters, My Wife and Kids. Like it's because I knew how my family was. I knew this wasn't normal, and I always viewed sitcoms as this is how family should interact. So a lot of mine was based off that because it wasn't really somebody there to teach me. But
Edward just actually brought up something that I didn't really think about for myself. Church actually does play a big role in establishing that male-female, out of a good or bad. It does make that,
right.
The man is supposed to do this, that, and that. And I even think about that in terms of how it was in church, in terms of how they in a sense, define what a man role was as well.
So that's where I'm different from y'all. I didn't grow up in church. So again, it's another experience that I didn't get.